Mexican officials say this prevents a fight with Trump and costs little, politically, at home. But it defies López Obrador's promises to defend migrants. Mexico City, Mexican officials are carrying out the Trump administration's immigration agenda across broad stretches of the border, undercutting the Mexican government's promises to defend migrants and support their search for a better life. The Mexican authorities are blocking groups of migrants at border towns, refusing to allow them onto international bridges to apply for asylum in the United States, intercepting unaccompanied minors before they can reach American soil, and helping to manage lists of asylum seekers on behalf of the American authorities to limit the number of people crossing the border. Breaking with decades of asylum practice, the Mexican government has also allowed the Trump administration to send more than 120 men, women and children to Tijuana while they await decisions on their asylum applications in the United States. The program could be expanded to other border crossings as soon as next week. Officials inside the administration of Mexico's new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, have called his stance on migrants a strategic decision not to anger President Trump. He doesn't believe he can change Mr. Trump's mind, they contend. Furthermore, the officials say, Mr. López Obrador has not wanted to jeopardize other aspects of the deeply interconnected relationship between the two countries, ranging from elaborate regional trading arrangements to information sharing on border security, transnational crime and terrorism. So he has avoided a bruising and potentially costly public fight over the issue. A lifelong defender of the poor, Mr. López Obrador often refers to his plans for Mexico as a grand transformation, placing his ambitions for the nation on par with those of its great leaders. He has burnished his everyman credentials by cutting government salaries, flying coach around the country and opening the opulent presidential palace to the public. He has also vastly reduced the number of Central American migrants Mexico deports from its soil. But not everything has transformed. Exhibit A is the Migrant Protection Protocols, the Trump administration's policy to require asylum seekers to remain on the Mexican side of the border while they await decisions on their fate. Rights groups contend that it dumps migrants in an increasingly violent Mexico and impairs their access to legal counsel and family support in the United States. Mr. López Obrador's administration, which came into office saying it would not cooperate with Mr. Trump's anti-immigration agenda, has gone along with it on several fronts, including accepting women and children despite earlier promises to take only adult male asylum seekers. The Mexican government argued the policy requiring asylum seekers to wait in Mexico was imposed on them by the United States and they consented for humanitarian reasons. It is also true that for Mr. López Obrador, giving in to some of Mr. Trump's border demands and rarely saying a word against the American president in his daily press briefings carries little political cost at home. Opening square bracket. Closing square bracket. To many Mexicans, the fate of migrants is secondary to domestic concerns about jobs, security and corruption. Mr. López Obrador retains an 80% approval rating, despite his government's willingness to take back migrants applying for asylum in the United States. If we have to accept a handful of people back into Mexico, that's not really a problem for us, not even politically, said one official who was not authorized to discuss internal deliberations. What we really want to avoid is a public fight with Trump. But in its effort to avoid a cross-border fight, the Mexican government has chosen politics over its humanitarian ideals. Critics contend, Mexico is continuing to play the role that the U.S. thinks it should, which is to contain the migrant influx, said Melissa Vertiz Hernandez, who coordinates the Working Group on Immigration Policy, a network of civil society and rights groups in Mexico. The delicate balance with the United States has left the Mexican government without a clear, consistent immigration policy, so Mexican states and municipalities along the border are often in the position of fending for themselves under pressure from their American counterparts. In the Mexican border city of Reynosa, for instance, almost no one is allowed to cross the bridge to apply for asylum in neighboring McAllen, Texas. They are typically blocked or apprehended by Mexican officials, forcing migrants to try their luck in other towns. In the city of Piedras Negras, officials rounded up hundreds of migrants who arrived in a caravan in recent weeks and kept them under tight watch in a shelter with limited access to outsiders, advocates say. After a public outcry, the center was closed and many were bused to other cities and towns along the border. The mayor of Ciudad Juarez, meanwhile, has threatened to sue a neighboring governor for shipping migrants to his town. It has become a game of political hot potato, with desperate Central Americans who are fleeing poverty and violence caught in the middle. Elsewhere along the border, shelter officials say they manage lists of asylum applicants by name, nationality, age and documentation to assist Mexican officials who are complying with American Border Patrol mandates.